Objective, what we hope to achieve this morning through the webinar is we want to share information and tools that you'll need to help the families that you work with access the Canada Learning Bond as efficiently and successfully as possible. There are a number of tools that SmartSAVER has developed and makes available, and we want to explain them to you. We want to show them to you and hopefully help you to understand how you can use them in your daily process. The agenda that's on the screen today is kind of the standard agenda that we use when we're face-to-face. Today, we're coming to you virtually. There are a few things that we're going to try and do by extension, but some of them we might not be as successful. Typically, we would go around the room and undertake some introductions and find out who's in the room. Unfortunately, it's a little tricky to do that. One thing I would ask anyone who is listening to this morning's webinar over the speakers of their computer, if you could mute your speakers, as straightforward as just pointing at the little speaker icon on your screen and click. If it's green, it's live. If it's gray, it's muted. That'll just eliminate any background noise. Now, we had a question up when many of you logged on, was asking the question. It was asking the question whether the Canada Learning Bond and having the Canada Learning Bond had an impact on federal assistance or provincial social assistance, and that was an example of some of the questions that we'll be asking as we go through the morning, just to kind of that's something that we'll be asking through the morning, and watch for those, and we appreciate you participating and answering those questions. So we will be talking about the Canada Learning Bond. We're going to talk briefly about what it is and why it matters. We're going to also deliver the bare basics, really, of registered education savings plans, and especially where you can find out more about RESPs. The bulk of the morning will be given over to looking at the tools that SmartSAVER has available to help in the Canada Learning Bond conversation. Start My RESP is an online application that can be found on our website, and partners of ours build typically Canada Learning Bond splash pages on their own websites, and many of them will have links to Start My RESP on their websites. And we'll look at some of the common barriers. We'll talk about what you might expect in having conversations with families about the Canada Learning Bond and opening RESPs and signing up. As I say, we'll pause for questions along the way, and typically we'll see if there's a way for us to have a little bit of a discussion virtually over the line here. To get us started this morning, I would like to share a particular video that we've produced, and this is Jess's story. And we'll watch that and come back in just a few minutes. This is something that we like to set the scene.
My name is Jess. I'm from St. Catharines, Ontario. I'm 28. I have 3 children. They're 7, 5, and 3. I'm a mom. I'm a working mom. Typical day is extremely busy. It's exhausting, but it's so fun. Like college for 3 kids is such an overwhelming number that on one income, you don't even think about it. You just hope for the best. I had never heard of the Canada Learning Bond. I didn't know that grants or bonds existed with the government. I didn't know that they even had that available. $2,000? Yeah, that's definitely sounds like something too good to be true.
I think the Canada Learning Bond provides a great opportunity for really helping children understand and their families understand that you're not in it alone, that Canada as a whole is investing in their education and sees savings as a way of helping finance college, right? That this whole idea of a meta message, we save, we go to college, and then it's not about the amount of money they're saving, but it's about the psychological effects. It's about creating this engagement.
This is a commitment that the federal government has made, that they're putting money towards, and the fact that we can participate in something and leverage federal dollars to increase total savings is transformative, and more importantly, the ability to help low-income families save for their children and enable children to attend post-secondary education is a game changer.
When I think of banking, because it's me in my situation, I think of paychecks and bills. I've never experienced anything to do with saving or anything like that.
I think creating a warm introduction between the bank representative and the applicant family is really crucial to this component. It starts off as a savings relationship through the RESP, but also it's one that can grow as people begin to see a shared commitment to their savings journey.
Children who have, and even low and moderate income children who have accounts are about 4 times more likely to graduate from college than if they did not have accounts. Right? And so this is really important because it once again speaks to the ability of savings accounts to kind of narrow the gap.
The application process is probably the easiest online form I've ever filled out. I mean, I've done a million things. Everybody has. Ordering things online. I made a Snapfish book for my mother for Christmas. It honestly took me 2 hours. This thing took me 5 minutes. The feeling I get from having this now is more of a sort of a sigh of relief, because it's a start and everything starts somewhere.
So the Canada Learning Bond, what is it? We talked about the fact that it can be as much as $2,000 from the federal government. It's a grant that's available to children in families with an income at or below currently $45,917. That net family income increases depending on the number of children in the family. In fact, families with 16 kids can have a net family income of over $122,000 and still be eligible for the Canada Learning Bond. The bond itself is available to any child born since the year 2004, since January 1st, 2004, and living in families with eligible income. So why we do what we do and why the Canada Learning Bond is so important. Research demonstrates that establishing savings for kids living on lower income, setting up savings for their future income, their future education, sets in motion a chain reaction of success. The establishment of an RESP motivates a family to save. A family's growing investment in an education fund builds the child's commitment towards school and their confidence to pursue and complete post-secondary education, and other higher education, of course, leads to improved employability, earnings, and financial stability. Children with as little as $3,000 in savings are far more likely to graduate from high school, and children as young as 11 begin to assess whether college or some form of post-secondary education is possible for them. And that will alter their school-focused goals and the effort they put into their schoolwork accordingly. Research also shows that on average, 1 of every 3 children in receipt of the Canada Learning Bond goes on to education or training, some form of training after high school, who would not have otherwise done so. Education savings improve high school attainment. They improve employability and help break cycles of family poverty. In fact, research shows that 98% of Canada Learning Bond families do in fact make contributions and save on average just under $17,000 by making contributions which trigger further grants, even though they don't have to contribute a single dollar to get their Canada Learning Bond. So it's pretty straightforward how it works. I mean, it's as straightforward as opening a registered education savings plan, which can be done at no cost, and again, requires no contribution. When the RESP is opened, the Canada Learning Bond application is also made by the financial institution, by the federal government, and it takes about 65 days from the time of the application for the initial deposit of the learning bond, and that's that initial deposit of $500 that lands in the RESP of the eligible child. As mentioned, Canada Learning Bond families do in fact make contributions even though they're not required to, and making contributions into an RESP will trigger additional grants of 20, 30, or even 40% from the federal government for making those contributions. And the amount of matching grant depends on the family's income. Canada Learning Bond families, families earning at or below 45,917 are eligible for as much as a 40% match, and as a result really accelerates the contributions that families make. And in an RESP, in a registered education savings plan, savings grow. They're sheltered from tax until the child is ready to attend post-secondary education. I'm going to open things up now for questions. If there are any questions, we're putting up a poll question as well. We ask people to go ahead and answer that question. True or false, the government will match a family's contribution to an RESP by as much as 40%. Everybody's doing really well on that question this morning. Yes, in fact, it's true. Earlier, at the beginning of the presentation, we asked the question whether or not having money in an RESP, getting a Canada Learning Bond has any impact on federal or provincial income support. In fact, money in an RESP does not have any impact on either federal or provincial impact support. It doesn't have an impact. Remember that you can ask a question by typing into the Q&A box that you'll see on your screen. It's as straightforward as just typing in chat style. I think we have a link for that video that we just watched as well. We'll be sharing that after this morning's presentation. If there aren't any questions at this time, we can move on to the next step in this morning's webinar, our presentation. We're going to go live to our smartsaver.org website, and we'll start to look at some of the specific tools that are available that can help you help families access the Canada Learning Bond. So just going to the screen now, and we'll take a look at tools that are available. So here's the SmartSAVER website. This is smartsaver.org available, and we encourage anyone of you who are watching this morning to take a look at our website and move around on it and see what makes it work. You'll see on the screen some key elements. The 1, 2, 3 buttons, what RESPs offer. We'll show people at a glance all of the basics, and we'll provide links to all of the basics, and you can find information further down the line to help you to answer the questions you might have about RESPs. Some of the materials are things that have been produced by SmartSAVER to try and quickly and efficiently tell the story. We hope as well that the website is a little friendlier than maybe some places people might go. We'll go to Start My RESP in a second, which is the online application. But I'd like to show you these 2 buttons on the right-hand side of the home page. The first thing we can take a look at is what we call the calculator. A lot of institutions that children might be interested in attending have these sorts of things. It doesn't matter how hard you try. When you start typing into a university's calculator all of the information they ask you, it almost always comes out to it's going to cost you $100,000 to come here, which can be a little deflating. From our point of view, what we would like people to do, and we encourage anyone working with a family to show them the calculator, to show them, in fact, how much success they can have very quickly by making small amounts of contributions. You see, I just put in the name, I put in an age. We're living in the province of Ontario. We have the family income set up at a level that in this case will trigger the Canada Learning Bond. You'll see at no contribution, the federal government will provide up to $2,000 in grant through the Canada Learning Bond. Making as little as $5 a month starts to greatly accelerate the process, and making as much as $20, whoops, the other way, making as much as $20 a month can very quickly accelerate. You'll see the gold bars are your contributions, and the blue bars are the contributions the federal government will make. Remember those matching contributions. And so with just a small amount of money, it's possible to generate significant amounts of savings that build assets and make it easier for children to go on. So that's the calculator. I'd also like to show you our eligibility calculator. This is a tool that will quickly show you what, if any, grants your child might be eligible for. It's as straightforward in this case. Again, same information as was keyed into the contribution calculator. This time it shows at a glance that the family could be eligible for the Canada Learning Bond, the Education Savings Grant, and the Canada Education Savings Grant, the additional grant, and that's that extra grant that gets up with Canada Learning Bond families to as much as 40%. It also shows at a glance the critical pieces of information, critical things that would be needed for a child to qualify for the grants that are in the calculator. So these are two tools that can be very useful for people working with families to quickly show them the message of hope rather than that message they might get, which is how difficult it's going to be to make things work. Let's go over now to Start My RESP, which is our online RESP starter and Canada Learning Bond application. This is a tool that we encourage anyone working with a family to show them, and if you can work it into the process at your organization to actually walk through with them. It's as straightforward as logging on to smartsaver.org. If you don't have a CLB splash page that has a link to the URL to the application, you'll see quickly at a glance. It'll remind people, the basics. It'll remind them that it's only going to take about 10 minutes to complete this application. It'll remind them that SmartSAVER will send information to the financial institution they're going to choose. The institution will contact the applicant. There will be a meeting with the financial institution. You won't be charged any fees. You can start the RESP account with $0. You'll need to bring ID, and you'll be expected to sign an application. I can hear a little background noise, and I'd just like to remind folks that if they're watching the webinar this morning and not logged on via the phone, to mute your speakers. So you can see the little speaker icon up at the top of the screen just by clicking on that. Turning it off from green will mute that. So let's take a look now at Start My RESP. So because I'm on our special stage site, I've got to key in a password. It's right here. Just take me a second. Sorry about that. Okay. There we go. So you won't be asked to type in that password. That's just so I can actually walk through all the way to the end of the application and show you everything without actually submitting an application. So what we've tried to do with Start My RESP is collect all of the information that's required to open an RESP and apply for both the Canada Learning Bond and the additional Education Savings Grant. We've tried to kind of gamify things. Throughout the application, it's really just point and click, and it is supported in 5 languages currently, English and French, as well as simplified Chinese, Punjabi, and Spanish. The application itself has to be submitted in either English or French, but by choosing language support, you immediately start to see subtitles, if you will, that can help people better understand what they're doing as they walk through the application. So again, it's point and click. We'll point to English and hit the yellow arrow, which will take us to a window that will again provide an additional support, reminding people all of the basics. In particular, reminding them that they're going to be meeting with a financial institution. They're going to show ID, but they will not be charged any fees, and they can start the RESP account with no contribution at all. So we'll accept, and we'll get started. So the first thing you're asked to do is enter a postal code. I'll just put our postal code here at SmartSAVER in Toronto. For purposes of this application, I'm going to choose RBC, but you'll see the on the screen the financial institutions that are participating in the application. They are the national banks, and in Ontario, Meridian Credit Union. The participants on the Start My RESP application are all financial institutions that have agreed, A, to participate, B, to work the way that we would encourage them to work, which is not to try and upsell the applicant when they arrive at the financial institution for the meeting, to provide access to a no-cost, no contribution required RESP. Individuals will not be opening an account. They don't have to open an account with the bank. They don't have to have an account with the financial institution that they choose. There will be no credit check. Quite literally, these financial institution partners have made themselves available to help people open RESPs and apply for the Canada Learning Bond. So I press the yellow arrow. In most cases, you're going to be speaking with the primary caregiver. We'll choose primary caregiver. While we're here, I'd like to point out a couple of features of the application. You'll see the question marks from time to time. These provide additional information, answer the obvious questions that people might have as they're going through the application. You'll also see this telephone icon. That's our 1-855 number. It rings at SmartSAVER's offices, and we're here 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, to answer questions. People can also ask questions online at info@smartsaver.org. We're very happy to answer any question anyone might have at any time, including if they have questions while they're at the financial institution. So we've indicated that we're the primary caregiver. This window is reminding us what we'll need. We're going to need the social insurance number of the individual applying, the primary caregiver. We'll need the name and date of birth of the child, and we'll need the social insurance number for the child as well as for the applicant. As you see, there are always opportunities for people to get more information throughout the application, links to the most important sources for the most straightforward explanations of the basic questions. So we've been asked now to give permission to apply for the Canada Learning Bond and the Additional Education Savings Grant. It's point and click, and now we're being asked to provide the information for the child. So it's as straightforward as keying in the information for the child, the first and last name, the date of birth, is point and click. We're asked about the gender of the child.
Okay.
We're asked as well if the child is a resident of Saskatchewan. There are a number of provinces in Canada that provide additional grants, and Saskatchewan is one of them. And so in any event, in the case of working in Ontario, that's typically not going to be an issue, so we'll choose no. I'm hearing a little background noise again, reminding people, please, if they're listening on their computer, to mute their speakers and to mute microphones so that we can just sort of carry on here. Once you've provided the information for the child, you'll be asked for the applicant's information. Again, we're just going to put in a test message here. You'll be asked for your address. One feature of Start My RESP is it does have autofill. As you start to key in your address, it will fill in the particulars. Just going to put my own telephone number in here, my own email address. So you're asked for the address, the street address, the city, the province, the postal code. You're asked for a telephone number, and you're also asked to provide an email address. It's best that it's the telephone number and email address of the applicant. Sometimes we're asked the question, what if my applicant doesn't have a phone or doesn't have an email address? Many of the caseworkers, many of the organizations that we work with, the caseworker will use the office number and the office email, but this will be the telephone number that the financial institution will use to contact the individual to make an appointment. And so arrangements would have to be made about how to make that appointment. Preferred call time, choose afternoon or evening. We ask people if they'll give us permission for us to send them emails. We at SmartSAVER don't really send very many emails. The only emails we ever send have something to do with education savings. However, it's not necessary to say yes to proceed. Again, are you the custodial parent? It will automatically, if you say yes, it'll fill in that you're the primary caregiver. Again, now you're being provided with all of the information. You're being asked to review it carefully. You can edit the information if, in fact, something is wrong, and then you're taken right back to the information review. If everything looks fine, you can go on to the final stage, which is actually entering in the various social insurance numbers of the people who are applying. And so it's a very straightforward process there. I'm going to have a test social insurance number that we use. And again, I'm doing this on a special staging site. When you do this live, ultimately this will be sent to the financial institution that's been chosen by the individual. Once you've keyed in the social insurance numbers, you see the blue arrow. And what that signifies is, in fact, you have completed the process. And now what has just happened is a secure email has been sent to the financial institution that was chosen. They have the information. SmartSAVER doesn't keep the information. And they will contact the individual, usually within 3 days, to set up an appointment at which they'll come in and verify the information on the application. They'll come in with 2 pieces of ID, and they'll sign the application. Within 65 days, if they are deemed eligible, the money will be deposited in their RESP. What you're seeing here now is a screen that comes up if you access Start My RESP from smartsaver.org. The How Did You Hear About Us gives individuals a chance to credit, if you will, the organization that maybe told them about the Start My RESP application with having delivered them to the application. If in fact you enter from a custom URL, downtown Mission in Windsor, for example, now has a custom URL, you wouldn't see that window. We do ask people if they want to refer anyone to encourage others to open RESPs and get the Canada Learning Bond. And then again, it's as straightforward as congratulations, you completed the application. As I said, typically it takes about only about 10 minutes to do that. In fact, once you've done it a few times, it goes much more quickly, and it's possible to do it in just a few moments. Really, it's a very straightforward process. Going to come back to the main presentation now, and open the floor to any questions that people might have at this time. If anyone has any questions, they can ask them now. You can do so, remember, by typing in chat style into the Q&A box. It's possible as well if you're online, rather on the phone. It's possible for you to unmute speakers, or rather unmute mics, and we could take the questions that way as well. What questions do we have from our people attending the webinar this morning? I've got a question here. I guess it's from Adam. It's from Adam's unit. Sharon from the health unit in Windsor, Essex, is asking, is there a plan to add more languages to the application? Currently, the 5 languages that are available, a reminder, English, French, Spanish, Punjabi, and simplified Chinese. The application itself, we may add other languages. That is something I don't think that we have made any decisions on currently. The information on our website, smartsaver.org, is available in 16 languages. Sometimes it can be quite helpful if you have someone who doesn't speak one of those 5 languages. It can be quite helpful for them to see the information there as it stands. I have a question. What do I do if the family doesn't hear from their bank? We at SmartSAVER, through Start My RESP, have helped close to 10,000 families apply for the open RESPs and apply for the Canada Learning Bond. We do hear from time to time over our 1-855 number or over the info line, the info@smartsaver.org. We do hear from people from time to time who haven't heard from their chosen financial institution. It's pretty easy calling that 1-855 number and letting us know, or letting us know via info@smartsaver.org. And we collect up a little bit of information about you, about the the child that you've applied for, and then we typically can reach the financial institution and escalate things and make sure that a call is made. Probably about less than 5% of the applications that have gone through have had any kind of difficulty that we're aware of. That might be the more common question that we get. We'll probably get about 1 or 2 calls a week about that. We're happy to help unravel whatever confusion there might be around the application, and so give us a call and we can escalate things. Are there any other questions at this time before we move on to the next part of the presentation, which is we're going to take a look at our community website and some of the other tools that people can use to help people open RESPs and access the Canada Learning Bond. Well, seeing none, and of course you're, oh, wait a minute, here's one. So Stephen is asking if it's possible to register multiple children at once for a family plan. The way that Start My RESP has been set up is to allow one child, opening an RESP for one child at a time. What can happen and what we encourage people to do in a case where they might want to have a family plan is even though they've begun a process to open multiple RESPs for 1 or 2 or 3 kids, when they get to their meeting with the financial institution, A, that's where all of the really difficult questions can be answered, and B, it's possible for them to change information that may have somehow slipped by and was incorrect in the initial application, but also that's a time when they can sit with the financial advisor who will be helping them open the RESP, and they can ask to open a family plan at that time. We have another question. If a family already has an RESP but did not receive the CLB, that's a very common question. Many times when you're working with a family and telling them about the Canada Learning Bond and telling them about RESPs, you will hear from families, well, I already have an RESP, so I probably have it automatically. First of all, there are over 80 different companies in Canada that provide RESPs. Some of them are set up in a way that actually cannot accept the Canada Learning Bond. So there are some types of RESPs that can't even access the Canada Learning Bond. Since 2013, any RESP that can, in fact, access the Canada Learning Bond does automatically apply for it. But prior to 2013, RESP providers did not necessarily automatically apply. So in a situation where you have a family that already has an RESP, one of the best things to do is to ask them to check. It can be as straightforward as looking at a statement to see if in fact the Canada Learning Bond shows up in their statement, or contact the service provider in some way to find out if in fact they made an application for the Canada Learning Bond. If they discover that they haven't, all of the information that's required for the application is there. So it's as straightforward as saying, well, if you haven't applied, could you please do so? And then they'll make the application. We have another question here. Who decides whether or not a family is eligible to receive the CLB? What if their income is really close to the cutoff? Well, the way that the determination of the CLB works, the eligibility of the CLB works, is when an individual applies, opens an RESP and applies for the Canada Learning Bond, the application for the Canada Learning Bond is referred to the Canada Revenue Agency, and a review of the family income is done through the taxes. And so, in fact, at that time, the CRA is the one that determines the income eligibility. Remember that the Canada Learning Bond is a retroactive grant. So if a family, for example, has a 10-year-old and they're applying today for the Canada Learning Bond, and they haven't had an RESP prior to their application for the CLB, when they open the CLB and apply for the Canada Learning Bond and the CRA is asked for the income eligibility determination, if they see that the child has been eligible, in this case, for all 10 years, then in fact, that child will be eligible for the initial deposit of $500 plus $100 a year for every year of eligibility. So that child would actually have an initial deposit of 10 years times 100, $1,000 plus $500 or $1,500. Now, if a family's income is really close to the cutoff, either above or below, it's always a good idea, if they don't have an RESP, to simply open the RESP and apply for the Canada Learning Bond. It could be that at some time in the past, the family was at an eligible income, or it's possible that sometime in the future the family might be income eligible. Once the RESP has been opened and the application has been made for the Canada Learning Bond, you don't have to apply ever again. It's a one-time thing. Any year that the family and the child are eligible for the Canada Learning Bond, it will automatically be deposited into their RESP. So I think we'll press on. Thank you for your questions. We'll have an opportunity later as well. And of course, remember, any questions you have, you can always reach us at info@smartsaver.org, or you can certainly call us anytime on our 1-855 number. On your screen right there, you see SmartSaver's community website. This one's a little trickier to get to than smartsaver.org. I'm going to switch over and we'll do a live look at it in a minute. But to reach that particular website, one goes to community.smartsaver.org. Partners from our community incentive program, other Canada Learning Bond champions from around the country, anyone interested in promoting the Canada Learning Bond will find tools, tips, and tricks from the SmartSaver community. So let's go and take a look at that. Just take me a second to pull that up. Many people go to our community website. As you can see from the drop-down windows, there is an absolute wealth of information for anyone working in the field. There's all kinds of information, best practices, blog posts, and all kinds of examples of tools that people have used while they connect the families they work with to the RESP and to the Canada Learning Bond. Let's take a look right now at essential tools. Some of you may have received an email yesterday or today with some sort of prep materials. You may recognize the action map from that. Pardon me. The action map is one of the more powerful tools that is available. I encourage anyone who's working with families, especially in the early days of working with families, helping them to open RESPs and access the Canada Learning Bond to, in fact, use the action map. It kind of takes you on two journeys. You first establish eligibility. Remember that you could use the calculator and the eligibility tool that are available right on the smartsaver.org homepage. But if you're working with a family that has a child born since 2004 or later, so a child 13 years old or younger, and whose income is at the eligibility level, some of you may see a more, you were sent a more current version of the action map. Up until last July, the National Child Benefit Supplement was the easiest way to determine income eligibility. Of course, that no longer exists, and so really it's, and you'll see the current action map will show you at a glance the $45,917 requirement for income eligibility. If in fact you have, you're working with a family that has a 13-year-old and has the right income, then you want to ask them, do you have a social insurance number, and does your child have a social insurance number? Remember, to get the Canada Learning Bond to open an RESP, child needs to have a SIN number as well. If in fact the individual or the child doesn't have a SIN number, then the action map takes you along the process to show you how to get a SIN. If you're looking at it online, there are actually links that quickly provide the basic information and contact information so that you can quickly explain to people what they have to do to get a social insurance number. If in fact the family parent and the child has a SIN number, then it's as straightforward as you know, would you like to apply? And it's, again, as straightforward as clicking on the link and going on to the application, working with the parent right there to open an RESP and apply for the Canada Learning Bond. If the parent needs more information, then again, you can take them back to smartsaver.org, or perhaps there are other handouts that you might share with them. Also on the action map, we share a 1888 number that people can call if they already have an RESP and they're not sure whether it's an active RESP, they're not sure if they have the Canada Learning Bond. This number can be called if the parent has a social insurance number for themselves and for their child. This is the Government of Canada 188 number. This is a special line, though, the RESP helpline that can provide everything right up to whether or not the RESP has the Canada Learning Bond, even who the provider is. Another tool that can be very useful is the Quick Reference Guide. We'll shortly have the 2017 reference sheets online, but they have been, hard copies have been sent to you. They have the eligible incomes that can, in fact, connect families to A, the Canada Learning Bond, B, the Basic Education Savings Grant, or C, the Additional Savings Grant. So in the case here of a family that's Learning Bond eligible, they can get the Learning Bond, they can get the 20% match on contributions, and an additional 20% match on contributions made. Families that have income between, these days it's a little more than is on your screen currently, but in fact are eligible maybe not for the Canada Learning Bond anymore, but they are still eligible for an additional 10% grant from the government, an additional education savings grant. Families with income above the additional education savings grant threshold, in fact, are only eligible for the 20%. All families in Canada are eligible for at least the 20% grant. Finally, tools that I think are extremely useful, very important, and I encourage you to familiarize yourself with them. These are called the Financial Institution Info Sheets. I've got one on the screen currently from RBC. These are info sheets that have been produced actually by the financial institutions themselves. We've cooperated with them to make them as accessible as possible. When you review these info sheets, you'll see a variety of things, not the least of which is that in fact an RESP can be opened and that requires no money to get started, to apply for the Canada Learning Bond. This is a terrific item to take with you to the financial institution, or the applicant can take with them to the financial institution. It's a way to kind of put their minds at ease that when they get there, they're not going to be upsold, that in fact they can open an RESP without making any contribution at all. So the info sheets are also available, as I say, at the community website. They're a terrific thing, and typically if you're working with a family and they've chosen a financial institution, in this case like TD, it would be a terrific idea to quickly open it up, print it out for them, email it to them, make sure that they can take it to that meeting at the financial institution themselves. And now we'll go back to our presentation. Pardon me. So we looked at the essential tools, we looked at the action map, we looked at the quick reference guide, and we looked at the FI info sheets as well. And Now, typically, in a live situation, we would talk about barriers that people run into when they're working with families, talking to them about RESPs, talking to them about opening RESPs, accessing the Canada Learning Bond. We've already had one question that actually is one of the more common barriers. Many people are worried that that opening an RESP and starting to put money in the RESP will have an impact on social assistance. That's actually not the case, and so it's as straightforward as helping people to understand and believe that an RESP is income and asset exempt for the purposes of social assistance. It has no impact at all on the family's ability to accept and use income support in any province or territory in Canada. Another common barrier is the social insurance number. In some cases, you'll have conversations with families, and they'll respond with, you know, oh, I don't have a social insurance number for my son or daughter. I can't do this. It's then a really great idea to say, okay, well, let's get you that social insurance number. Let's make sure that we get that. And so I do encourage people to, at very least, provide the contact information that they can find across using the links at the smartsaver.org website, or most of you know where the closest Service Canada office is. Many of the organizations that we work with run ID clinics, and so it's kind of like anyone who's been through the ID clinic, now that you've got social insurance numbers for your children, why don't we talk about RESPs and the Canada Learning Bond? So those are two of the key barriers. I wonder if out in the audience this morning, if there are any other barriers that people encounter when trying to open an RESP for a family or talking to them about the Canada Learning Bond. Any of you who have had conversations with families, whether you've run into any of these sorts of obstacles. A reminder that if you want, you can actually, you should be able to respond right across the phone line, but if you're listening in on your computer's speakers, you can type into the Q&A box, chat style, any kind of comment or question if you wanted to share a typical barrier that you might face. Some people have encountered, again, a very typical thing that they'll encounter will be a family that will kind of look at them and say, well, RESPs are for rich people. RESPs cost money. And if there's one message that SmartSAVER spends all of its time trying to deliver, is that, in fact, you can open an RESP and access the Canada Learning Bond and never pay a single dollar. Recently, some new partners came on board working with SmartSAVER out west, and ran into a particular financial institution that was, I guess people were opening RESPs and they were being told, well, you have to have a minimum amount in an RESP to keep it open until the RESP, until the Canada Learning Bond arrives in the RESP. That's actually absolutely not true. The RESPs that you can connect families to through smartsaver.org, through Start My RESP, never need a single dollar contributed to access the Canada Learning Bond. And again, the information on those bank sheets will remind you of that. Any barriers that people are experiencing? Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask at this time about today's presentation? A reminder, we reviewed the very basics, why it's important to help families open RESPs and access the Canada Learning Bond. From the viewpoint of SmartSAVER, the Canada Learning Bond, in particular in an RESP, can absolutely impact an individual, a student's ability, their high school attainment, in fact, improves the likelihood of a child finishing high school and going on to post-secondary education. Rises by a factor of 3. They're 4 times more likely to graduate from post-secondary education or some other post-secondary training if they have as little as just a few $100s in an RESP. We reviewed the Canada Learning Bond, an initial grant of $500 that then has $100 a year added to it for every year of income eligibility to a maximum of $2,000 until the child is 15. So we looked at the Canada Learning Bond. We then looked at SmartSAVER.org and the tools that you can access there to have the basic conversation with families that you're working with, establishing eligibility, showing them, in fact, that it's possible to use the Canada Learning Bond and other grants that are available from the federal government to quickly accelerate savings, and people can, in fact, with small contributions, can in fact build significant amounts of money that if it won't pay for a university education, it will certainly reduce any kind of potential debt load that might face a family. And we looked at the Start My RESP application. Again, takes less than 10 minutes, supported in 5 languages, and collects all of the information that's necessary to open an RESP and to apply for the Canada Learning Bond. We have a question here. How do you respond to those who think it's unnecessary to open an RESP, apply for the CLB, given the Ontario provincial government's free tuition program? That's a new question that we get quite a lot nowadays. It's a terrific program by the provincial government to provide larger grants to students living in families that are living on lower income. First and foremost, we talk about the fact that money in an RESP is very motivating for students. If you have money in an RESP, remember, your student is 3 times more likely to graduate from high school, 4 times more likely to attend and complete some kind of post-secondary education or training. The RESP isn't only just about having money at the end of the rainbow, it's also about helping a child to start to build this notion that I'm going to go. The conversation at home with an RESP becomes not if a child is going to attend post-secondary, but when and what they're going to take. The next thing that's important to know, if a family, a student applies for OSAP, the so-called free tuition, the maximum grant is based on average tuition in Ontario. The maximum grant today is at around $6,200 a year for a maximum of 4 years. So it's $24,800, which is fantastic, but it's not enough to pay tuition, books, room and board, transportation, any of the sorts of things that money can be used from an RESP to pay. As well, if a student is interested in studying something other than, sort of the basic arts at university, in particular, accounting, engineering, and one of those sorts of courses, immediately the tuition jumps on average from $6,000 to more like $14,000. Plus, to be eligible for the OSAP grant, a family needs to have a minimum of $3,000 themselves each year that the child is in attendance, unless the family is on OW. There are a couple of other exemptions, but families on OW, in fact, the requirement is waived. I think it's actually $3,500 is waived. So right away, helping people to understand that it's a terrific grant, but it's actually not 100% of the costs that are associated with post-secondary education, and that they're going to have to come up with some money of their own even to qualify. And as well, you know, opening that RESP right now, make sure that you can have the sorts of conversations with your student at home. That is the conversation of hope, the conversation about the future.